Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's story, we step into a moment that changed the course of faith forever. Imagine standing on a quiet mountain early in the morning, with the wind brushing against your face. The sky is still, the ground is dry, and in the distance, a father walks with his young son. He holds a knife in one hand and firewood in the other. His heart is heavy, not because he's climbing a steep path, but because every step brings him closer to the most painful decision of his life. This isn't just any father, and it's not just any walk. This is Abraham, and he's about to face the ultimate test of faith, a test that would echo through generations, shaking hearts and stirring souls. This is the story of Abraham's faith and sacrifice, a powerful narrative that still speaks to us today. It's a story of deep trust, painful obedience, and unshakable belief in a higher purpose. But it's also a story of human emotion, fear, confusion, and silent prayers. Abraham wasn't just a prophet or a historical figure. He was a man, a father, someone who laughed, cried, and questioned like any of us. And yet he was asked to do something that would terrify even the strongest of believers. Let's take a step back. Abraham and his wife Sarah had waited a lifetime for a child. After decades of longing, hoping, and praying, they were finally blessed with a son, Isaac. He was their miracle, their joy, their promise. But just when everything seemed right, just when it felt like their life had found its rhythm, God gave Abraham a command that shattered every sense of comfort. Take your son, your only son whom you love, and offer him as a sacrifice. How do you respond when the very gift you've been given is asked to be given back? How do you obey when every fiber of your being screams no? This is not just a story about religious tradition or old scripture. It's a story about faith under fire, about being torn between what you feel and what you believe, about stepping into the unknown, not because you're fearless, but because you're faithful. Abraham doesn't argue, he doesn't delay. With quiet determination, he rises early, saddles his donkey, takes two of his servants and his beloved Isaac, and sets out for the place God had shown him. But inside, the storm is raging. What was going through his mind on that journey? Did he cry when no one was watching? Did he question God in silence? Did Isaac sense the weight in his father's steps, or the hesitation behind his smile? As they climb the mountain, Isaac breaks the silence. "Father, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham's answer is simple yet layered with hidden agony. God will provide. But would he? Or would Abraham have to go through with it? And what kind of God would ask for such a sacrifice? This journey is far from over. With each step, the tension grows. The altar is being prepared. The knife has been sharpened. And the question still hangs in the air. Will Abraham do it? Will he sacrifice the son he loves so deeply? Stay with us, because what happens next is more than a twist. It's a moment that redefines surrender, reshapes faith, and reveals a truth far greater than we imagined. This is only the beginning. Abraham kept walking, his steps slow but steady. The silence between him and Isaac grew heavier with each passing hour. The servants followed behind, unaware of the full weight their master carried. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the rocky path, but in Abraham's heart, time seemed frozen. Every heartbeat echoed the question, could he really go through with this? This wasn't just any command. This was about Isaac, the promised child, the answer to years of waiting, the boy through whom nations were meant to rise. And now, that same promise was being asked to be laid down as a sacrifice. To understand the depth of this moment, we have to go back. Abraham wasn't always a man of unshakable faith. He had his doubts, made mistakes, and questioned his journey many times. But time after time, he chose to trust. From leaving his homeland without knowing where he was going to believing he would become a father in old age, his life had been a long road of obedience, even when things didn't make sense. But this test, this was different. This wasn't about his own life or comfort. It was about his son, his flesh, his future, his everything. Isaac, innocent and trusting, walked beside him without fear. He didn't know the full picture. He carried the wood on his back, just as Abraham carried the fire and the knife. Together they climbed. Together they breathed. But only one of them knew what might happen at the top. Abraham looked at his son, maybe 100 times that day, wondering if it would be the last time he saw him alive. But he kept walking, because somehow, He believed that even in this darkness, there was a light, that even in this impossible situation, God had a plan. Still, no sign came, no voice, no vision, just the whisper of wind and the weight of unspoken words. At a distance, the mountain rose taller, and Abraham paused. "You stay here," he told the servants. "We'll go and worship, and then we'll come back to you." The words were careful, hopeful, maybe even prophetic. We will come back. But did he believe that, or was he trying to convince himself? Isaac followed him up the final stretch. The place of sacrifice was near. The altar would soon be built, but there were no answers yet. Only questions, only quiet, and the knife was still in Abraham's hand. As Abraham and Isaac climbed higher, the silence became almost unbearable. Each footstep crunched against the gravel like a ticking clock counting down. Isaac held onto the bundle of wood, his young arms wrapped around it tightly. He looked up at his father, not with fear, but with trust. That made it harder. Abraham felt his throat tighten. He kept his face still, but inside, he was screaming. He wanted to turn back, he wanted to run, but every time he hesitated, that same voice echoed in his memory. The voice that told him to go, to trust, to obey. Back at the camp, Sarah paced nervously. She had watched them leave that morning, Isaac laughing and Abraham quiet. Something in Abraham's eyes had looked different. She hadn't asked too many questions, but deep down, she felt it. Something wasn't right. The very idea of losing Isaac was unthinkable. He was their miracle child, born when hope was long gone. He brought joy to a home that had known only waiting and disappointment. And now she stood alone, with the silence of her tent wrapping around her like a warning. On the mountain, Abraham and Isaac reached the place. Stones lay scattered. Abraham began building the altar slowly, placing each rock with trembling hands. Isaac helped, still unaware, but questions swirled in his mind. He kept glancing at the fire, the wood, and the empty space where the offering should be. He was old enough to sense something was off. Abraham avoided his eyes. The knife still hung at his side. The fire crackled softly in the wind. Everything was ready, except Abraham's heart. Because how can any father be ready for this? How do you offer up the one thing you love most? And still, no answer from above. Abraham's hands shook as he placed the final stone on the altar. He looked around as if expecting something, anything to stop him. But the mountain was quiet, the sky above remained still. The only sounds were the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional crackle of the firewood. Isaac stood nearby, watching closely. His eyes were filled with confusion now. "Father," he asked again, his voice soft, "where is the lamb?" Abraham swallowed hard. His mouth was dry, and his heart pounded in his chest. He forced himself to answer, barely above a whisper, "God will provide." He wanted to believe those words with everything in him. He needed them to be true. But the silence that followed only made the weight heavier. Slowly, with a heart full of sorrow, he asked Isaac to come closer, and without resistance, Isaac obeyed. He trusted his father. Maybe that's what hurt the most. Abraham tied Isaac's hands gently, each knot a battle between love and obedience. Isaac didn't cry out, he didn't fight. He just looked at his father, searching for answers that never came. The boy was laid on the altar. The wood beneath him crackled faintly. Abraham stood over him now, the knife in his hand, his fingers gripping it tightly. Sweat ran down his brow. Every part of him trembled. His eyes welled with tears, and his chest ached with a pain no words could explain. One final breath. One final look into his son's eyes. This was the moment. Would he do it? Would he really go through with the sacrifice? Time seemed to stop. The blade hovered in the air. Still, no voice from the heavens. Still no sign. And just when everything seemed unbearable, the silence held on for 1 second longer. As the blade hung in the air, time stretched into eternity. Abraham's hands were frozen, locked between heaven's command and a father's love. His knees felt weak, but he didn't let go. The silence on that mountaintop was louder than thunder. Just 1 second more, and then something shifted, a rustle in the nearby thicket. Abraham's eyes flicked sideways, but it was nothing. Or so he thought. His breath quickened. he turned back to Isaac, whose eyes were wide but calm, as if he somehow trusted this moment wasn't the end. That faith, so pure, so silent, tore at Abraham's heart. He tightened his grip. Still, the sky gave no answer. And then, just as he prepared to move his hand, something unexpected happened. A voice, but not from the heavens. Down the mountain trail, hurried footsteps echoed closer. Abraham's body stiffened. Someone was coming. The sound was real, rushing, urgent, breaking the sacred stillness of the mountain. Was it a servant? Had Sarah followed them? Or was it something else entirely? He stood still, knife still raised, body trembling. Then a cry, faint but desperate, carried through the wind. "Abraham, stop!" Abraham's eyes widened. That voice wasn't divine, but it was familiar, a messenger, a stranger, or perhaps a test within the test. He turned, just for a moment. That split second of distraction deepened the conflict burning inside him. Was this the true trial, not only to obey, but to discern? What if the interruption was part of the plan, or part of the temptation to disobey? Then Isaac spoke again, quiet, steady. "Father, I trust you." Abraham nearly collapsed at those words. His mind raced. Was this truly what faith looked like? Being pushed to the edge of reason, heart, and logic? And just as he faced the most impossible decision, the footsteps stopped. Heavy breathing. A shadow, and suddenly the test took on a new shape, one that neither Abraham nor Isaac saw coming. Abraham turned slowly, the knife still in his grip, as the shadow stepped fully into the light. It wasn't Sarah, and it wasn't a servant. It was a man, dust-covered, breathless, a traveler with urgency in his eyes. Abraham's hand trembled as he stepped in front of Isaac, protective by instinct, unsure whether this was danger or deliverance. The man raised both hands and said with a steady voice, "Do not lay a hand on the boy." In that moment, everything changed. Abraham's heart stopped pounding. Time, which had been crawling so painfully, suddenly released its grip. The knife slipped from his hand and hit the stones with a dull clatter. He fell to his knees beside Isaac, overwhelmed, exhausted, and in tears. The voice wasn't just from the man. It echoed with something deeper, something divine. The test was complete. Abraham had passed. His faith had gone to the very edge, and still he had not turned away. And then came the twist neither expected. From behind the altar, caught in a nearby bush, was a ram, silent, still, as if it had been there all along. Abraham stared at it in disbelief. Not only had God stopped the sacrifice, he had provided the offering himself. The very words Abraham had spoken, "God will provide," had become real right in front of them. He untied Isaac quickly, holding him close as if afraid to let go. But as they turned to prepare the ram for the offering, the traveler spoke once more. "This is not the last time a father will face this choice," he said, "and one day another son will walk up another hill, carrying wood on his back." Abraham paused, confused. The man didn't explain further. He simply nodded and walked away, leaving behind only dust and a question that would echo through generations. Isaac looked up at his father, puzzled, but Abraham only smiled through his tears. They offered the ram together, but the words of the stranger lingered. The test was over, for now, yet something deeper had just begun. As the smoke from the offering rose into the sky, Abraham stood still beside Isaac, watching the flames dance quietly over the altar. There was no more fear now, only a deep, steady peace. The same mountain that once felt heavy with silence and sorrow now felt sacred. The air was lighter, like something unseen had lifted a great burden. Abraham placed a hand on Isaac's shoulder, and for a long time they said nothing. They didn't need to. The test was over, and something had shifted between them, not just as father and son, but as two souls who had just walked through fire and returned. They began their journey down the mountain together, no longer in silence but in quiet conversation. Isaac asked about faith, about trust, about what it meant to believe in something you couldn't always see. Abraham answered with honesty. He spoke not like a prophet, but like a father, one who had struggled, one who had questioned, and one who had learned that true obedience doesn't come without cost. Back at the camp, Sarah ran to meet them. Her eyes searched both their faces, and when she saw Isaac safe, she broke down in relief. No words were needed. She knew something profound had happened on that mountain. Abraham embraced her tightly, whispering, "God truly did provide." From that day forward, the name of that place was remembered as "The Lord Will Provide." It became more than a story. It became a symbol of unwavering faith, of sacrifice, and of God's mercy. But Abraham never forgot the stranger's final words, "Another son, another hill." It lingered in his mind, like a seed planted deep within. He didn't fully understand it, but he carried those words in his heart for the rest of his life. The story of Abraham and Isaac is more than just a moment in history. It's a powerful reminder of how far faith can go, how deeply trust can stretch, and how even in our hardest trials, we are never truly alone. It teaches us that obedience sometimes looks like heartbreak, but it can lead to something far greater: hope, provision, and a future shaped by grace.